Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, and that is for the novella titled Return to Innsmouth by Henry Hinder. This is the first book in the Strange Aeons series. This is a very unique book for anything that I've read, which is a mix of Lovecraftian horror, which I love, and comedy, which is a very strange combination, and that's kind of what intrigued me to read this novella. I received this novella for free. I saw it being like given away or something like that, and so I got it on Kindle, and I figured I'd read it sometime because just the premise itself of Lovecraft mixed with comedy was just such an unusual and interesting concept that I figured I had to read it at some point. And so that time has come. As far as some stuff that I liked about this novella, which is quite a bit, I enjoyed this novella a decent amount. First of all, I do think this is just a very fun and entertaining book. I think probably more so if you're a fan of Lovecraft, just the tropes that are used and the way that the Lovecraft lore is used in this book, I think contributes to some of the comedy and things like that, and the way that this book works. So I think, you know, if you're not as much a fan of Lovecraft, I think you probably won't get as much out of this novella. They may still get some entertainment value out of it, but as a big Lovecraft fan, I thought this was really entertaining at multiple points. I think that the Lovecraft elements and the comedy elements were both handled very well. The humor didn't all land for me, which I think is just natural. You know, comedy in general, you know, if you have a comedic book, not all of it's going to land for everyone. You know, that's just the nature of comedy itself. Like, I feel like that's one of the more kind of subjective things in like storytelling, so that just makes sense to me. But a lot of it did land for me, and I thought it was very amusing. It's kind of random, wacky humor, not a whole lot of like really clever humor, I guess I would say, but I think it is just very fun and entertaining type of humor. And then the Lovecraft elements are also done very well. There are portions of this book that are written in such a way that really echo Lovecraft's own style, which I really enjoyed. And then the Lovecraft elements themselves mixed with the humor just had this really interesting kind of juxtaposition to them that made it pretty entertaining to read. I also think that the dialogue was a lot of fun in this book, which also provided a lot of the comedy. Not all the comedy. Some of the comedy was more like situational or things like that, but a lot of the comedy came through the dialogue interactions, most predominantly through the two main characters, which are Todd, who is the viewpoint character, and this book is being told in the first person, kind of as like a diary entry or something like that. And then you have Bill, who is this person that Todd is working with. He's like an assistant type thing with Bill. And Bill is kind of this grumpy old man, basically. And Todd is sent to help him out because he has had these dreams in the dreamlands of Lovecraft, which kind of indicate that he has to go do this to achieve some higher purpose. And so that's kind of the basic setup, is he has to go and be Bill's assistant in order to achieve some nebulous unknown goal. And so the two of them set out to Innsmouth to do some investigating about some stuff that's going on there, and that's kind of the general premise of the book. And I think that that premise itself is cool, but also just the two characters. They're the two characters you mostly see in this book. You see a few other side characters as well that are fun, but the dynamic between these two is very entertaining. It's a pretty well-worn trope to have kind of the normal guy and then just the grumpy old man, who also is a little bit crazy, perhaps. But it's a lot of fun. It's a fun dynamic that they have together, and especially where you see through the eyes of Todd in this book, that made it, I think, even more entertaining. And a lot of the comedy comes from Bill, or from Bill's interactions with Todd, or things like that, which I enjoyed. As far as other stuff with this book, because I don't have a whole ton to say about this book. It's a pretty short novella. It's like 120 pages, 130 pages. As far as negative things, I do think the big weak point here for me was the plot, which I think kind of makes sense. To me, with both comedy and Lovecraft, typically the plot is the least engaging part of both of those styles of storytelling to me. Because I think with a comedy, the plot is mostly there to be a vessel to get the comedy to the reader. And then with Lovecraft, it's all about atmosphere and dread and horror and things like that. So I think it makes sense for the plot to be the weak point here, but it still is something where it's like, you know, it wasn't that engaging to me in terms of the plot, but everything else going on around it was entertaining enough that I always was excited to read this. You know, I wasn't going to this because I was interested in what was going to happen in the plot. I was going to this because I was interested in seeing the interaction between the Lovecraft and the comedy, and interested in seeing just the weird things that were going to happen and things of that nature. So, you know, that makes sense, but it still is a point that I would like to talk about, you know, something that I think was a weakness of the book. I also, again, don't think all of the comedy landed. I think a lot of it did, but not necessarily all of it. But that is pretty much the only other big negative point that I have with this book, I think. The only other thing that I can think of is, like, I might have liked to see the Lovecraft and the comedy a little more deeply intertwined. They feel a little bit separate at some points in the story. Like, there's points in the story, or like really throughout the book, where, you know, it's very comedy focused, and then it has these sections of very Lovecraftiness. And they're not really super intertwined with one another. They're kind of intertwined, but not quite to the extent that I might have liked. I might have liked to see more like comedy being told through the Lovecraft type prose or something like that. Like, I think there's interesting ways that you could approach something like this that I think this got close to but didn't quite go all the way. So that's more so in the sense of something I might have liked to see rather than an actual, like, real criticism of the book itself. But overall, I did enjoy both the Lovecraft elements and the comedy elements. Just would have liked to maybe see them a little more deeply intertwined. So that's pretty much all I got to say about this one. Overall, I enjoyed it a lot. Very entertaining. It's very fun, especially as a Lovecraft fan. It's one of those things where I went into it not expecting to, like, be super drawn into the story or the characters or anything like that. I just expected to be entertained, and I was definitely quite entertained. So as far as a rating out of 10 that I would give this book, I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. Really enjoyable, a lot of fun. Just not, you know, like I said, not like an amazing book or anything like that, but very entertaining, worth reading if you can get it. I think it's pretty cheap, like on Kindle and things like that. Of course, I got it for free, but I think it's only a few bucks on Kindle, so well worth reading if you're a Lovecraft fan. And I may have to check out the second book in this series later on, because I think it was a lot of fun. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you have read this novella before, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it, or if not, if you're interested in reading it. And if you know of any other books of a similar style of Lovecraft mixed with comedy, let me know that in the comments as well, because I'd love to read more of that. I've heard of a couple, but literally only a couple, so I'd love to get some more stuff like that. So that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.